And I want you to imagine that you've been invited round a friend's house to watch a movie, okay? And you know that in this house there is one particular chair. And this chair is a big armchair, and it's made of leather. And as you lean back, it goes back, it leans backwards, and the footrest pops up, and it's got this really cool place to put your drink and your snacks. And it's the best chair in the whole house because it's right in front of the TV, and you've got the best view. And you know that there's only one chair like that. What are you going to do about it? Now, are you going to have the attitude that says, oh, I don't care where I sit. I don't mind if I just have to sit on a stool somewhere. Or are you going to think to yourself, no, I've got to get there first. I've got to get that chair. And are you going to do anything to be able to get that chair? Some of you are nodding. Okay, well, you may not be nodding in a while. Now, it's nothing wrong with having a great chair. Having a great chair, having the best seat isn't a bad thing. But it's when we think that we deserve to have that chair above all the others. That's when things start to go wrong. And it's when we refuse to give that chair up to somebody else that our attitude comes into question as well. Now, today's parable was told by Jesus while he was at the house of a Pharisee. Now remember, the Pharisees were the religious ruling authorities in Israel at that time. And Jesus attends this meal. He's been invited by the most prominent, the most important Pharisee. And so there he is at this dinner. And he notices during the meal that all the guests, as they arrive, they keep trying to take the most important seats, which are called the seats of honor. So Jesus tells this parable to warn them about their attitude, about how important that they felt they were. And the parable is about a feast or a banquet. So here we have a picture of a great banqueting table. Now, so there's different chairs, there's a couple of stools down the bottom, and there's a big chair at the end. And the seat of honor, or the most important seat, is the head of the table. That's where the most important person would sit. Now, if you were invited and you had to choose one of these seats, I wonder which one you'd choose. Whether you'd start off by thinking to yourself, well, maybe I'd have one of the side ones, or maybe I'd have one of the stools, or maybe I'd go for that big important seat straight away. Well, one man, he chooses to sit down here on a little stool down here. He takes the most lowly seat. That's where he starts off. But another man, and this is about the two men, he decides, no, I'm going to sit right at the most important seat to begin with. And so that's what each of them choose. That shows their attitude to how important each one of them thinks that they are. And so while this man's sitting there, he thinks, yes, everybody will now see me. Everybody will know and think that I'm the most important because I've sat in the most important place. He wants a lot of attention. He wants everybody to notice him. It's all about himself. Suddenly there's a problem. The man who's hosting the feast, the man whose house this is in, he realizes there's a problem and he has to come up and whisper something in his ear, and he says to him, we have a problem. Somebody more important than you has arrived and you're sitting in his seat. Well, that's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Shall we see this other person? Here he is behind him, sitting in the most important seat. Now, the problem is that two of them can't sit in the same seat, can they? And nor can this man carry on sitting in his lap. So he's going to have to move. So he thinks to himself, well, this is a bit embarrassing. I'm going to have to not sit in this chair anymore. I know, I'll sit in the chair next to it. But there's a problem there as well. What do you think the problem might be with that one? There's another person sitting in there. Yeah, that's right. Shall we see this other person? Because he went straight for the most important seat, some of these other seats started to get filled up. So he thinks, well, I can't sit there anymore, so I'll have to slide down to one of these other ones. But the problem is all these have been taken as well. Not just on that side, but all the seats on this side have been taken too. There's only one seat left. Can you see the one seat that hasn't been taken? The little stool all the way down here. So he has to come all the way down here until finally he sat down there. Do you think he'd still be smiling? Do you think he'd still have that smug, arrogant smile on his face? No, I don't think so either. Let's show what he's really looking like. And it's not just because he's had to come from the top seat down to the bottom seat. Something even worse has happened. He's now sitting at the kids' table. Oh, how terrible is that? Some of the kids are here looking, you're thinking, what's so bad about that? There's the man sitting at the kids' table. Now imagine that this man had to go off on some business. Imagine he had to leave early. the host would come up to this man, the humble man, the lowly man, the man who's taken the lowest seat, and he would say to him, "Friend, why are you sitting there? Why are you sitting in the lowest seat?" He said, "I've got a better seat for you." And as this man looks around and sees the table completely full up, he realizes there's only one seat left. And the host says to him, come up to the highest seat." It's amazing, isn't it, what the Lord will do? You know, this man who chose the most important place was humbled in front of everybody else. But this man who chose the lowest seat was honoured in front of everyone else. The attitude of thinking that we're very important, the attitude of going through life thinking that we're number one, that's what sin is. Sin is that attitude. And all the things we do that are wrong come from that attitude. The Bible says that God always opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Do you remember Pastor Steve, just in his prayer, he said that God opposes hateful people, he opposes murderous people, but he opposes proud people as well. Listen to what Jesus says at the end of this passage. He says this. He says, "For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted." I don't think Jesus was just giving a warning to the Pharisees. I think he's giving a warning to every one of us, that we don't go through life with this attitude of thinking that the world revolves around us, that we're the most important thing. Remember the golden rule that Jesus gives us, that we're to love Jesus, we're to love God with all our heart, our soul, our strength and our mind, and we're to love our neighbour as ourselves. That whatever we want for ourselves, we should want the same thing for other people as well. Let's practice that habit of humility and not the habit of self-importance.